Hi all, welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. So Tuesdays at 10 past 9, and I'm just going to check a few things before we start. Mute over here. Okay, just going to say hi on streaming to YouTube as well as on Play Chess. Hi all. Okay, hope you've had a good week, everyone. So let's carry on the amazing Kasparov series, which there seems to be a great deal of interest on YouTube. The treasure trove of games from Garry Kasparov. We're going to go to 1981 for this next game. So it was against Yusupov, so one of the strongest players in the world at that time, Yusupov. So this is a very, very strong opponent. Just quickly checking the bio of Yusupov. Yusupov, let's get pronunciation.
Artur Yusupov.
Artur Yusupov.
Artur Yusupov.
That's from the chess games site. They have nice bios and pronunciations. So he was an IM in 1977, a few years before this game. And he got the GM title a year before this game in 1980. A world title candidate thrice running, losing the semi-final round in 1986, 89, 1992. So pretty close contender actually. So let's have a look here what happened. D4 from Kasparov. Let's connect to Livebook and add a kibitzer. Okay, so knight f6, we have c4, e6, so Yusupov is playing for a Nimza engine, but we get a queen's engine, knight f3, bishop b4 check, and this is quite a common move, just bishop d2. Now black often plays either queen e7 or sometimes a5, that's quite popular actually, just to play a5 here. Which is the one chosen. G3 is pretty standard, so pretty standard sequence. B6, white castles. Now quite often bishop, white castles, quite often bishop b7 is played here. We have in this game bishop a6, which is also quite popular, hitting c4. Queen c2, protecting the pawn. Knight c6. Now we have bishop g5, so that looks like an annoying pin. And the bishop here on b4 retreats, which reveals that black, has got use of b4 at the moment, but that's taken away with a3. And now we have h6. Kasparov gives up the dark square bishop, and that's often as a prelude to try and strengthen the grip on the light squares. Here now rook d1, black has a bit of pressure on the centre. Queen e7, e3, rook a e8. Now knight fd2 here is played. Now there is an interesting plan. After protecting this pawn, this means actually knight c3 becomes possible without losing c4, and then knight b5 is interesting. There's nothing to stop a knight b5 plan here at the moment after this move. Black plays very aggressively with g5 actually. So this is very committal, pawns don't go backwards, but how easy will it be to try and exploit these any potential weaknesses? Remember, black's got that dark square bishop, white hasn't got a dark square bishop, so isn't black justified to do this in some way? And in fact, after knight c3, with now this pawn protected, it's possible to do that with the knight maybe coming into b5, but black just retreats his bishop, preparing for things like f5, and maybe to like break the pawn chain, try and break this pawn chain down. But knight b5 now, and it's annoying, this is slightly annoying in this position. If black takes, then c7 clearly is a problem, and actually that can be taken, and then For example, here queen takes is good for white. So black actually has to tolerate that knight for a bit. He plays queen d8. Now, very interesting actually, with the dark square bishop, you think white needs to be a bit cautious here, but actually we have f4, putting pressure on black's pawn chain here, this little pawn chain. Knight e7 is played. Knight f3 now, putting more pressure on g5. Black responds with knight f5, counter-attacking e3. If you can get this bishop, that would be great, but that's not going to happen. Queen f2 is played, protecting e3. c6. Note the knight can't slip into d6, this one's covering it, so knight goes back. And actually, it's a pawn sack. So Kasparov actually is wanting to put pressure on the king side here, and you might think, well, hang on, can't black take here then take here? So this is actually a real pawn sack now that is being played here. Interesting. But okay, let's see. G takes. So G takes opens up potentially the G file. This is dangerous potentially. Note, yeah, there are weaknesses in black's camp over here. This is an isolated pawn. These light square weaknesses also, they're a bit more exposed, but for the moment black just grabs the pawn. So the question is, if anyone's awake here over that on stream or anywhere on PlayChess, hello. So the question here is, enough for the pawn? Yes or no? So white's just sacked a pawn here. Roll up my sleeves. White sacked a pawn. So do you think white's got enough? Yeah? Let's have a look at this position. Let's do some evaluation. White's centre can expand with e4 because d4 is actually adequately protected here. So we've got quite a lot on d4. We can play e4. The knight's deprived from h4. We're covering h4. So based on the next move, white's actually setting up immediately some compensation. And he does play e4. There is some compensation here. But is there enough? Knight d6. We have now knight e5. Looking at the bishop, tying down the knight. And yeah, this is a little bit dangerous. The thing is about this position, white is ready really to use the g file. He just needs to move his king, and he's going to be quite ready to use that g file. If the bishop, say, retreated, we could actually just play king h1. This would be an attacking idea. I mean, there's compensation. Okay, so here black actually plays f5. Interesting move. Interesting. Offering the bishop. Now that is taken, and now the knight's kicked, and now e5. So white's locked out the bishop. Actually, this center pawn chain is actually blocking out that bishop for a moment. Knight c8. Engines have this as slightly better for black at the moment, though. They like the material, but black has got issues on the king side. The light square weaknesses. Remember, white's got a light square bishop. Black hasn't got a counterpart light square bishop. So actually, this next move looks at them basically. Bishop f3 just prepares to cut across some of these weaknesses, and g6 could be a very good outpost square at some point. So we have king h7. Black is not really in a position to challenge bishop h5. So that's the next installment, literally, on the king side. Bishop h5. The rook moves, and now this g file, king h1. Things are brewing here. It seems the coffee is brewing on the king side. Even though white's a pawn down, black's got a hemmed-in bishop. This is an aggressive bishop against a hemmed-in bishop, and the rooks are aggressive compared to passive rooks. This is a classic Kasparov position, really. We can see that Kasparov's pieces have got the energy, the dynamism, the quality. They seem to have a qualitative difference to the opponent's pieces. This knight looks a bit sad as well on c8 at the moment. Sure, this knight hasn't got easy opportunities at the moment, but it still looks better than the c8 knight. So anyway, here black plays rook g8, rook g1, yes, rook g1. So immediately it's looking a little bit dangerous, this g6 square. Things like putting the queen here to go in, it seems dangerous. Bishop h8. But now we get an incredible idea, actually. Remember I said this knight didn't seem to have many opportunities? Okay, it seems to be better than this one. That's what I mentioned. Now, that might be a clue or it might not be. Can you guess? White to play, and I'll give you 200 points if you can guess white's next move. Okay, surprising move maybe, but it's actually, eventually, I'm talking at a high depth, eventually the Houdini chess engine finds this move as well. Eventually, yeah, I'm serious about this. This has taken quite a while to determine this move as well. The engine has determined this move, agreeing with Kasparov's move in this position. I'm into the theory of tactics, why tactics would happen. Well, okay, white's got a stronger grip on the light squares, his rook's more active, the knight's more active, but yeah, how do we break through, say, to the king side? Well, this next move, knight e4, actually is played. The knight is immediately menacing, if it's left alone, it's threatening to just jump in, and it will be carnage after jumping in many ways. It's taken, I mean, I don't think we can ignore this as black. If queen f6, this is horrible. This position is just brutal. It's just, we can either not, we can just win the exchange, etc. Yeah, and then rook g7 after. It can't be avoided. It seems to, black's got to like take this gift. So f takes e4, but what does it do? What does it do, this move? It liberates a pawn, actually. It liberates that f pawn, which is the next move, f5, with the idea of f6 now. And things are getting a bit more claustrophobic around the king's area. If this square is taken away, the king is running out of squares. If the queen got onto the diagonal, as an example, that would be dangerous, mega dangerous. So black perhaps should have played, it seems queen f8 might be a defensive try, but actually he played rook g5. This does lead now clearly to an advantage from engine view. Anyway, rook g5, it seems to be a technical, it might not be the best defense, but we'll check other defenses soon. White plays now rook takes g5, h takes, and gets in this f6. So is this a huge deal to play f6? Well, actually black didn't even move the rook here. He didn't even move the rook. He played king h6, just giving the rook up. Why? Well, if rook e8, what happens? This diagonal is painfully weak. Queen e2 here is strong, or queen e3, just to hit this pawn. And if, say, takes, we can take here, Take the rook actually there. That's not good. If black doesn't take and just waits, well, that's mating. There, that's just going to be mating. How does black actually wait in this position? Actually, with g5 also a major kind of threat to mate in 3. It's difficult for black to actually wait. These pieces are just, yeah, it's not on, is it? So this position is not on. So black, maybe you can't go rook f7 and just take. So yeah, this would be a killer move basically. Queen takes here or here. If rook g8, then we just go to check here, and then if king h6. Okay, although black isn't mated here immediately, f7 as an example, f7, and if here rook f1 threatening to queen, and if here, then we're going to get in rook f6 check and a mate in 3 after queen e3, forcing, well, it's a mate in 3. This kind of stuff happens. Yeah, it's about the f pawn as well, making way for things like rook f1, rook f6 in some lines. Yeah, let's have a look at that again. So this odd defense, you know, rook g8 maybe had to be calculated, right? So let's look again at this. Rook f1, there's really no defense here, it seems. Tried rook, there's no defense. What did we try here before? Yeah, it looks pretty hopeless. Yeah, it looks hopeless. So anyway, so f6, yeah, king h6 was played. Just giving up a rook. F takes e7. This cannot be good. Surely it can't be good. Black's the exchange down now. Bishop f7 is played. We have d6, rook f1, freeing the queen because now the bishop's supported. We have g4 being played. White is threatening things like just simply queen e2 to h5 actually. So g4 is played. But now, quite a forceful move, bishop takes e6. It's getting queen h4 check. And here, actually, black resigned. There is a crushing move available for black here. A really crushing move. Can you spot it? Black actually resigned, not showing this on the board. So white's play, what is the most crushing move, do you think, here for white? Any ideas? Got one suggestion, it might be good. Okay, I'm going to show you, well, 200 points for this if you got it, if you get it. Rook f6 with tempo, yeah, it gets access to this. I think it's actually quite a crushing position anyway. Just have a quick look. But this is the mate in 2 after this, say. Yeah, I think rook f6 is the most incisive move here. So yeah, black would have to basically take, otherwise it's like mate in 2. But I think the position's so strong, even this might be good, but no, this is pushing it. This is pushing it. You can't just do this sort of stuff. You're just letting black off the hook. Actually, no. If the game had been played, I think we could be fairly sure Kasparov would go with the strongest move, rook f6 here. That's really all over now. It's absolutely murderous. Okay, so this game shows, I think once again, we've had previous examples where players that play moves like g5 learn to regret that against Kasparov, because something weird happens later and their light squares are opened up, they're exploited, they turn from you know, theoretical weaknesses to exploitable weaknesses because of the way Kasparov plays the position, so aggressive dynamically. He tapped into the light square weaknesses in black's position. Yeah, when black started playing things like g5, I mean, visually, yeah, we can all say, well, you know, light square weaknesses, but how do you actually get to them? So an amazing knight sack, which reduced the escape squares of the opponent's king and threatened all sorts of light square invasions, actually. So I thought this is an interesting game. What do you guys think? This was actually quite an interesting game, but the star move of the game, I think, is knight e4. Would you agree? To try and get into the light square weaknesses. So yeah, on to Yusupov, 1981. That's the first game I'd like to show you today. So let's go on to the next one. This next one is against John Fedorowicz. Played again in 1981. So John Fedorowicz. Okay, he's 57 at the moment. USA player, born in 1958 in New York City. Awarded the IM title in 1978 and the GM title in 1986. That's 5 years after the game. So he was first at the 1981 US Open, third at the 1984 US Championship, second at Hastings 1984 to 85. Yeah, a string of other impressive achievements. So great player, absolutely. Yes, let's have a look at this game. So d4 from Kasparov, often playing d4, knight f6, c4, e6. We get another Queen's engine, knight f3, b6. One of Kasparov's pet moves here, a3 is played now. This is very popular in the position. It's the second most popular in Livebook anyway, but g3 is the most popular. So a3, bit of prophylaxis against any use of b4. c5 is played, d5, bishop a6, again targeting now c4. Kasparov holds that, e takes, c takes. Now you might think knight takes d5 I don't believe is a good move here actually, because of the check. It's a trap. It's actually a trap. It's losing material. You can just take on a8, so that's a trap. You don't want to take that, not with the loose rook here. So g6, knight c3, bishop g7, g3, castles, bishop g2, d6. Looks a little bit like, now by transposition, into the like a Fian Chateau Benoni type structure. A little bit. Okay, white castles, rook e8, rook e1, and it looks as though, you know, black could be run over potentially in the centre. It looks like a little shaky. Queen c7. This pawn looks like a Benoni weakness. Bishop f4, it's targeted. Knight h5 though, driving the bishop back for the moment. Goes to d2, so the knight's for the moment misplaced slightly. Knight d7. Interesting move now actually. Queen a4, it is with tempo. And the queen might switch over here, you never know. In fact, it does. It's a way of switching rapidly to the king side, queen h4. Now the queen, look at these pieces. They don't seem interested in king safety, these pieces over here. Just visually, they don't seem interested in king safety, but okay. a6, as though, well, black's interested in, you know, b5, maybe c4, knight c5. Rook ac1, we have b5. And now in fact, against any use of c5, we have this move b4 here. So the knight's not going to be using c5 for a while. Queen d8, looking at white's queen. Bishop g5, we have f6. And again the bishop drops back. So the first time it did that, it put the knight there. Now it's caused pawns to go forward. F5, again hitting the queen, and again bishop g5. Queen went to b6, and just suggest here, actually may be better, well briefly, bishop f6 might be better, but okay, queen b6. We have here e4. It's an interesting move actually, because you might think, isn't this impossible? Because isn't white losing d5? Let's have a quick look at this. Black played c takes here, but what about if black took and played bishop takes d5? There's a move here which gives white an advantage actually in this position. This is just a temporary pawn sack. White to play here. This is a variation which could have happened, but actually white does have a good move, it seems. What does white play here? What do you reckon? I'll show you get 100 points if you this d6. This seems okay, and if say this is looking okay for white, this position. It's like another, it's just like a pawn sack actually. If we have this position, white's got a good play on the light squares. He'll be happy with this. Good compensation on light squares, and lo and behold, white's also got this light square bishop. There's a good play here basically. And more concretely, things like rook g4 might be possible, going for an attack soon. Okay, anyway, so black wasn't tempted to try and win d5. He took on b4, a takes, and he tries to put more pressure on c3. Okay, so bishop e3 hits the queen for a moment. And again hits the queen goes back. So doesn't Kasparov have to deal with this knight on f5? Sorry, doesn't Kasparov have to deal with the knight on c3? Yes, this is c3. c3. Doesn't he have to deal with the knight on c3? Again, the engine agrees with Kasparov's move here, funny enough, after a deep think. This is quite a deep attacking move now. White play, you'll get 200 points if you can find the move, and give yourself an extra 200 points if you have a vague idea of the continuation behind it. So white's play here, what does he play? Interesting. Interesting. So queen b6. Actually, you know, he hasn't got too much choice if he wants to try and win this game. If he just moves the knight, that's like defeatist. Black could just play f takes e4, and is black in bad shape? No, he's dismantled white's pawn chain. This doesn't look very clever. No, what he plays actually is sacking the knight. E takes f5. He's just sacking the knight. Black takes it via not via bishop takes c3, because we could just take here and take here, and there's no back row issue. No, black does want to win the knight. He plays rook takes e1 like this, and now the knight can be taken by two different pieces. Perhaps best was to take it with bishop as played, because taking it with a rook, this check, this position, tempo is nice for white, but yeah, he more testing actually is what was played. He took it with the bishop. So the idea is to get a rook now infiltrating, rook e7, and he's got a threat, well, immediately on d7 clearly, but things are conspiring here. We have rook c4 hitting the queen. The queen keeps on the h file. Bishop c8, so what's the big deal? Well, here now, after fg, also white now has a threat of mating 2 with check, king here, and rook takes, or here, queen f7. There's a threat actually of mating 2 now, starting with queen e6 check. So black tries to parry this with knight df6, holding the e6 square and hitting the queen. But there's a punchline here. Good calculation, amazing calculation, white play. Yeah, there's a punchline in this position, which is technically a forced mate actually. Bishop takes f6 was played. Very difficult for black after this. If he takes the queen, he didn't, but if he takes the queen, it's just mate in 1 actually, or mate in 2, but mate in 1 with rook e8 is actually checkmate. For those interested, there's also a mate in 2, by the way, we're taking here. So no, he can't take the queen. Cannot take the queen. So knight takes f6 was played. And now it's still very dangerous. We've got this rook cutting across here. And actually, g takes h7 was played. King f8, and white can just queen with check. And he just queens with check. This is simple and winning. Queen g7, and black resigned here. Yeah, this is just hopeless. There's no real danger for white here. Example continuation: king d8, check. Queen h5. Well, you know, queen up. Really. It's queen up basically. That holds everything, and well, it's just queen up. Yeah, no real need to check that out beyond there really. So yeah, this is just like winning. Also, technically, there was even a quicker way to checkmate with queen h6. The position was that strong. If knight d7, then mate in 2. Yeah, this is also pretty clear cut. And actually, what does black do here after queen h6? It's pretty simple and strong actually. Queen f takes 2 for knight g4. We can play king h1 actually. It's neat. We can avoid this little trap. Yeah, it takes, there's knight g4, and black's actually okay. But here actually we can just play king h1 apparently, and it's a forced mate in 5 here. There's no check. I don't know what we do here with black. Knight g7, we just get mated. Nothing. So actually Kasparov missed the more concise continuation, but this, he just needs to just calculate a win as a win as a win. It doesn't matter if he didn't play that at all. He's already done the work to win. He can win in whatever way he chooses here. There's a force mate in 7 with queen h6, or there's a force mate in 10 actually, technically, with this. This is a force mate in 10. If king h8, there's a very neat move here actually. This is a variation of the game. If king h8, very nice crushing blow here. Well, there's two again actually. There's two crushing blows again. One for the same sort of reasons as before, but there's another even more concise mate. There's a mate in 9 or a mate in 11. So yeah, have a look at this position. White to play here. What would you play here? Yeah, this, you know, this queen h6 still works here actually. It still works here. Queen f2, we can avoid this spectacular queen f2. No more checks. And if rook, say rook g4, trying to defend here, check here. Check. Mate. Queen h6 would be mating here quite concisely. Also there's knight h4 actually, for knight g6. This is not doing anything. Black runs out of checks. Yeah, knight g6 is friend. It's hopeless. It's hopeless. Yeah, so anyway, white basically broke through with this beautiful move earlier. So this e takes f5 in this position. How many of us would have played e takes f5? Wow. Full knight sack on c3, getting a rook to the 7th. Question though, question. Hold on a sec. Let's go back, rewind. This position. Queen, if the queen wasn't attacked, let's have a look. Bishop d5. Fg. Queen g4. Queen g4. With idea actually bishop h6. This might be strong for white as well actually. Probably not. I'm not sure queen h3. But yeah, queen g4 apparently is the strongest. Say this, queen takes c8. Yeah, what is black doing here? Say this, we just take here on g6. Yeah, it's all pretty weak on around the king again. Yeah, black seemingly, you know, played interesting forcing moves, but putting the queen there. But actually, it's the queen kind of wanted to be there, going into e6 now. He wanted to be there. Black's rook c4 pushed the queen into an aggressive position. Yeah, okay, back to the final position, and I just want to do a quick note on this. What on earth happened again? I don't know. It's amazing. Actually, it's amazing. It seems as though somehow again Kasparov managed to get his opponent's pieces away from his king, from their king. His knight sack here, like the previous game, maximized his attacking potential. Really broke through around the king position again with a knight sack. Basically, very interesting. With a knight sack on c3 this time. Yeah. What was quite nifty was the queen transfer, because it's actually from a queen's engine defense. You get quite a good, Kasparov got quite a good attacking position with this queen a4 with tempo. So after bishop e7, transferring the queen over to h4. So it was like a more aggressive position. But it was really the knight sack, you know, because when he also played b4, wasn't he weakening c3? Yes, that's the case. He actually sacked a knight on c3, and he made things work with his queen that was on h4. It's very interesting how it all worked, actually, the mechanics of this game. It seems really aggressive approach to the queen's Indian defense, which normally you'd regard as a positional opening, but here it seems as though white built up just a very strong direct attack around the opponent's king here. Okay, so let's go on to another game now. Hope you like that one too. So in this next game I'd like to show you is Belyavsky against Kasparov. So Belyavsky against Kasparov, 1981, Moscow. So Alexander Belyavsky.
Alexander Belyavsky.
Belyavsky.
Alexander Belyavsky.
Pronunciation from chessgames.com. International Master 1973, Grandmaster in 1975. So Belyavsky was born in Lviv, now known as Ukraine. He currently lives in Slovenia. He's 62 years old, still around. He plays for the Olympic team there. He's noted for his uncompromising style of play and his classical opening repertoire. Okay, and yeah, there's loads of bio around him, great player. So let's have a look at this game. So d4, Kasparov was playing black. Let's flip the board. And he plays actually the king's Indian defense. Kasparov plays the king's Indian defense, which is why I started playing the king's Indian defense, because of Kasparov and Fischer. Actually, I'm sure many people. It's lost its popularity a bit at the Super GM level, but there's still some strong GMs that play it, like Dinglerin is a king's Indian guru. So anyway, here we have f3. I mean, Nakamura occasionally. Here we have f3, the Simish variation. So yeah, bishop e3. We have, this is quite popular, c5. This is a popular gambit here in this position. I don't know if you've seen this before. This wasn't played, but it's a popular gambit if it's taken up. I don't want to get into that actually. Let's just go with Kasparov's moves. Knight c6, a6, and now quite often rook b8. Just a way of generating queenside counterplay is used with rook b8 or knight a5 quite often. But rook e8, that's also a popular method. Knight c1, which usually is preparing to meet e5 with knight b3. e5, actually maybe not in this position, I might have it slightly wrong. Actually, the most common move is what was played. It's not meeting knight b3. This has only been played once in my book. You've got to get the exact positions actually. d5 is the most common move. I think white wants to close up the centre. If he plays knight b3, I don't think this is actually wise to do this, leaving the centre a bit open. There's some piece pressure for black. It's about equal anyway. It's not that bad for black. No, close up the centre first. Now it's here actually, I was thinking more of this position actually, where knight b3 is the most common play, just to challenge the knight here with knight b3 and not mind about double pawns. This position, yeah, brings back memories. British under 18, the guy called Harris won it that year. I'd come ahead at Harris in the Lloyds Bank Junior under 18 the same year, but I remember in the British Championship he did much better, and he had this system with white with knight b3. I remember one of his games actually, Michael Harris. So anyway, so bit of trivia there. So I just remember these King's Indian games from the past at any level basically. But so here we have knight 1 e2, challenging the knight like that. Knight 1 e2, and black supports the knight with c5. This is quite interesting now, because black by doing this, is potentially making a very vulnerable pawn on d6. D takes c6, knight takes c6. Pawn looks pretty vulnerable, but there's another issue, knight d5, with an idea of bishop b6 now and knight c7 winning in exchange. But this is now quite remarkable what happens in this position. Now black doesn't really want to change the pawn structure with knight d5 because white is gaining significant lockdown space-wise. This is passive for black. This position is just passive for black. Doesn't really want to do that, condemn himself to a passive position by taking on d5, but there's a super aggressive dynamic move here which shows a different approach totally to the position and to these threats that white seems to have. Bishop b6, knight c7. Black plays a super aggressive move which kind of liberates quite a lot of pieces actually. This next move, black to play. Can you guess what black plays here? I love the Kasparov games. They bring back a lot of yeah, so much dynamic symbology in the games. You know, he creates so much dynamic play for his pieces. So this next move does it really. B5. It's like a liberating move. It's like, I love Kasparov's liberating moves. It's basically saying, take my exchange. Bishop b6. Take an exchange. Fork my rooks. See if I care. Rook b8. Knight takes. Queen takes. It's for a pawn. And also, of course, look, the black rook's been activated. It's one pawn. Black's rook's activated. The queen's protecting the knight. So white can't really afford queen takes d6 here. This is too active for black. This position, there'll be all sorts of threats. So we have knight c3, so it's just one pawn for the exchange. Engine doesn't like it that much. Thinks white's got a... It's changed its tune actually. Thinks it's about equal now. It was saying white had a small advantage, but now it's changed its tune to equal. Okay, so why would it be equal? Why? Well, after bishop e6, black's protecting the pawn, immediate concern, but also he's threatening to entrench a knight on d4 to try and blast open the dark squares for his bishop. So bishop e2, yeah, he just stuffs the knight on d4 now, right? This can't be taken that easily. This knight. White castled, saying, okay, I'm going to exchange up. But if he did take on d4, this is big trouble. This position would be big trouble, actually. Very big trouble. Can you see? There's actually a crushing move for black here to get almost +3. Black to play in this variation. What would you play with black here? Yeah, knight d5 is one of you has mentioned knight d5. We're putting pressure on d4 and c3. If the queen drops back, there's a beautiful move here. It'll be all over, game over. Give you 500 points for game over move. Here, this position. There's rook takes b2 here. You know, with the king still in the centre, this is just horrible. Bang. End of game, really. So yeah, it's too dangerous to actually touch this knight here. It's just far too dangerous to touch this knight. If the knight went back, this is just disgusting. It's horrible. Don't want to do that. Yeah. So the knight's left rather wisely. But d5 now. Trying to break down white's centre. E takes, knight takes. Threatening to take white's dark square bishop and then fork maybe later after. Knight takes, bishop takes. A beautifully entrenched knight on d4. This is still the exchange down, isn't it? But black's pieces look really aggressive. And in fact now, yeah, this bishop is actually seemingly aggressive. h5 to try and maybe bust open some pawns around white's king. Rook c1. Black defends that pawn. Bishop f1. h4 now with the threat of h3 to undermine this little pawn chain here. Rook e1. There's compensation for the exchange. Queen c6, getting out of any danger with bishop d4 here, but also the pressure is nice down the diagonal. I've said this quite a few times actually in recent days when looking at master games on my YouTube channel about how if you blast through the center, the next stop is the opponent's king here. Black's trying to blast through the center and maybe use the h pawn as well to blast down this diagonal. So we have bishop, oh pardon me, we have bishop h6 here. Bishop h8. Black is threatening clearly h3. We have f4. Now this is a little bit tricky actually. If e takes, white's back in the game actually after bishop takes. Looking at the rook, this would be well back in the game actually for white. No, you don't want to do that. I want to keep this f file closed. e4 is played with the idea now knight f5 and maybe even f6 just to win this poor bishop, because knight f5 would hold the h pawn. So knight f5 is actually technically a threat in this position, although black has paradoxically closed his own attacking diagonal. This is a major perk to be able to play knight f5 here. I want to just prove that just with a token move, right? So just give it token move, knight f5, bishop g5. I think f6 is good, but there's also before that rook takes b2 and a lot of other stuff black can do before that anyway, like mating 4. So yeah, but otherwise knight f5 is actually 2 threats. It's not just the bishop, it's also b2 again. So how does white parry this? Well, he plays rook d1 here, which pins the knight. If knight f5, I believe white can play rook queen, right? White can play queen takes d5 now, and this would be okay. This would be good for white. So the knight's been pinned basically. So here we have bishop e6. Again, renewing the idea of knight f5, which looks at b2 and the bishop. f5, that's taken. So this is actually now on the board. These 2 threats are now on the board. But the queen is protecting the bishop. So the queen actually just goes to f4, which also means the rook's now protecting b2. So both threats have been handled, it seems, and queen b8 is threatened. Now black doesn't want to lose a piece. He doesn't want to play something like rook b2. That just seems to just lose a piece, nearly, potentially. I was thinking this, but actually this is not a problem. It's not losing a piece because we can at least take that. No, the big problem here with taking on b2, this wasn't played, rook e8 was played, is this check. Here, rook takes h8, queen e5 check, rook takes f5 threatening mate. This is just crushing. It's absolutely crushing. This can't be allowed to happen. It's full of venom, this move, queen f4. That cannot be allowed to happen, that sort of stuff. Yeah, the back row is a bit sensitive. What we have is actually rook e8 here. Kasparov now has got material for his exchange sack. He's got 2 pawns for his exchange sack, and the pieces look really good. This bishop looks on the verge of being trapped, actually. So anyway, so we have rook fd2, check, and now forcing move bishop e5 is played here. Now this move bishop e5, if queen takes e4, then we can just take this bishop, actually. Thanks very much. Remember, the queen's holding the bishop, so queen g5 keeps holding the bishop. But king h7 now. Where's this bishop going now? Not so funny, is it? White tries to do something with rook d8. Kasparov just takes that. Takes. And you might think there's a diabolical trap actually with knight takes h6, but actually it's not. Black can actually just play knight takes h6. The position is winning, it seems, even with knight takes h6. But there's also other moves as well. Queen f2 is played, threatening a mate in 1. The rook goes all the way back. And now, yeah, just knight takes h6 is played here, funny enough. But isn't it offering this bishop? Yes, it is. The idea now is e3. So the exchange down, but gigantic threats in this position are emerging around white's king. The immediate concern here is knight g4 and e2. As an example, if the queen is not on e2, the queen drops back to c3. Now, it is 2 pawns for the exchange, but also black seems to have now h3, really undermining everything around white's king. Queen e1. And now knight g4, so saying, well, if you take my queen, I'm going to fork and win the rook. And actually, white felt his position was entirely hopeless here. He actually resigned after this move. Let's see. So clearly, if takes, he resigned here. If takes, we're just going to take the rook. Can't do that. What does white do? He's in a sort of he hasn't got too many moves. If here, points another thing at g2. This is a crushing form pawn by this stage. Well supported form pawn. Queen takes f2, just e takes, and we're going to be playing knight e3 and hg next. Yeah, say rook d1. Knight e3 is on the cards here. Say this, knight e3, so hg is next. Actually, mating. This is a forced mate in 2, actually. Yeah, this was a clever sequence. Kasparov just gave back his bishop. He won that bishop. Let's just rewind. Hold on a sec. What the heck happened? So, what the heck? After all that time plotting against the bishop, he didn't take it. He could have simply taken the bishop, surely. What is going on here? Queen takes h4. This is winning for black. This is winning. There's no mate for white. It's winning. It's like +10 for black. But we have a game continuation. Kasparov, in fact, preferred to give back the bishop, right? by playing queen f2, he's surrounding instead the white king with a load of his resources. After rook d1, bringing the rook back, because what else, right? There's back row issues. You can't do anything. There's back row issues. The rook was brought back home. And in fact, even here, there's other moves like bishop d4, which are crushing. This is absolutely crushing. Threatening mate on g1. This was absolutely crushing by this stage. So what he did, yeah, just by letting the bishops come off, both the bishops come off, he's still got a crushing position here with e3. Yeah, it's just something about this position here. He's got 2 pawns for the exchange. But it's hopeless. As an example, right? Well, white played queen c3. Now let's suppose white played h3. Actually, there's a really crushing move here. Black to play here. Let's suppose this happened instead, h3. Which seems logical, right? It stops black's h-pawn, but there is a move to break through here. A king's crushing move. King's crusher move, do you get it? King's crusher move. Black's playing, yeah, 200 points. Yeah, not knight f. Oh god, where's the mouse gone? Pardon me. The mouse is in shock. It's dropped to the floor. If knight f5, if I can find it again, knight f5. This isn't the end of game yet, but what is the end of the game is bishop takes h3 here. This position, knight f5 is even better than before, because if bishop g2, there's e2. And a knight g3 check. But there's even better sequence with this idea. Even better, right? Than this. Even better than that here. After bishop takes here, we'll play the check first. And now if bishop g2 would take on d1, it's check. Yeah. And if king g1, knight f5, even this position where white's a rook up is apparently it's dead lost. It's dead lost. As example, you know, here is a mate in, there's a forced mate, you know, white will have to give up the queen. It's horrible. Yeah, it's dead lost. Even this position after bishop takes h3, black can even, it's about king safety really. Black's not doing very well here, and also e2 is always on the cards as well. We've always got e2 as well on the cards, so white's also overloaded. This seems to just break through very crushingly. If king h2 is take here on the bishop. Yep. Okay, so yeah, it was a crushing position. I think white lost his sort of way much earlier, actually, much earlier. Yeah, black could have just won with knight takes h6. Okay, now, okay, I want to try and summarize. What on earth was this game about? I think Kasparov got a super aggressive position from the initial exchange sacrifice for 1 pawn. He damaged white's center a bit further with d5. He's sort of mining into white's king position with h5, h4, h3, and also on top of this, it seems as though the bishop on h6 was a major liability as well to deal with. There were so many issues, and in the end, Kasparov even let him off in a way, that bishop, giving his own bishop just to get all his pieces around the king. It was just devastating. The attacking combinations that are available, there was a lot of variations of attack which just are very successful in that position. When he's got his pawn on h3, his queen's around there, his knight's around there, he's also got the e2 threat. So impressive how he made the whole attack, this whirlwind attack. Yeah, but what triggered it all off earlier was getting all his pieces really aggressive with that exchange sack. So I think that very aggressive b5 concept is impressive to me. I don't know about you guys. The b5 is like saying, you know, it's going to take my exchange for one pawn, and he built such a wonderful position after. So I hope you got something from this these 3 games this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, have a good week. Okay, comments, questions, likes appreciated. Thanks very much. See you next week.